Hey y'all, hey, hope all is well with you. I am Leslie of LesAnn Creations, coming to you real quick. I'm popping in at the beginning of this video because I totally forgot to do an intro for it, and you're probably gonna see me do this a few times because yeah. So the video you will be seeing today is basically an intro to me working on a shirt, a man shirt. I have a commercial pattern that I use. It's probably an old pattern. I'm almost sure it is. But it's a pattern that I use to make my husband's shirt. I do make modifications, and I think I made modifications on this one, but maybe not. So all you're going to see in the first video, because it's going to be two, the first video is just me prepping the pattern. That means I've already cut it out. I didn't record that, you know. I mean, if y'all need me to record it, no problem, I can do that, but I just didn't record it. Me prepping the pattern, that means I'm fusing interfacing to the collar. I am making markings that I need to make, and pretty much that's it. So that's just me prepping. After I prep, you will see the next video. Of course, I'll probably do another, insert for that one too. So, just so you know that when it comes to making patterns, I always double check and make sure I have enough fabric, because I'm working out of my stash. Make sure I have enough fabric for the project, even when I make modifications. I make sure I have, of course, my scissors, marking tools. I tend to use chalk marking versus those actual physical markers. And the reason why I don't like the markers is a lot of times I've seen, even after it says it's supposed to disappear, the markings come back. Chalk, guess what? Brush it off. When you wash it or something, it's gone. You don't see it no more. So that is what I did. And that's pretty much, I did speed up the video slightly because it's just repetitions kind of work. Just make sure that whenever you are working on a project, whatever it may be, that the more you do it, the better you get. It's never going to be perfect the first time. It's never going to be perfect the second time. You may even have flaws after you've been sewing as long as I have, but it's still going to look good. I do say press or iron in between each process, each part of the process, and you will see that throughout the secondary video, because I didn't want to extend it too long, because the actual, how long it took me was probably about 3 hours, 3.5 maybe, something like that. So I didn't want to do that too long. So make sure you watch this all the way through. If you like the content I am serving you, enjoy watching me make things, please make sure you subscribe. If you got a question or something, drop a comment. It may take me a minute. I just realized I need to do a snippet video of me doing something else, because I didn't realize people sending me notifications and or making comments. Because I be forgetting to come back over here sometimes. I love YouTube and I be watching it, but dang, I be forgetting, y'all. Forgive me. But anyway, hope you enjoyed this content. I will catch you all the next time. Leslie of LesAnn Creations. Deuces. Okay, now I am here doing the collar. I use my scissors to clip markings instead of using markers, especially on the edge. I just make sure I do like only an eighth. It's about an eighth of an inch clip, because it's much easier than me doing the markings and they don't go away. So I did that, and then of course I still have to mark from what distance to what distance, which is the 2 dots that's on the collar, as to how far I need to sew into. I don't usually even do those markings. I probably won't even use those markings when I sew. So there's certain markings. Now, if you want to know what the markings are for, they are for when you want to encase majority of your sewing, and those 2 dots is where you clip in about, I think it's the actual seam allowance, which is 5/8, in order to flip out the shoulder or the neck seam. But that's not a big issue. I do most of my finishing on my serger, so I don't usually have to do the way they tell me to do it. So I do switch how I sew my garments a lot of times, because some of the way they do it, I don't like it. So that's me changing the way. The iron you see I'm using is a Panasonic cordless iron. I don't have the water housing on it because it actually was damaged and I didn't realize it. Oh, there's the pattern. I'm telling you, that pattern is old. Anyway, so I am using Pellon featherweight interfacing, just something to give some stability. I am doing both pieces because I am working with a rayon challis blend material, very faint, lightweight, and I wanted to have a lot more stability in the collar area. Not having steam, it does take longer to finish out this particular press, and that's the only thing I don't like about the iron. I love the portability of it, but let's just say it made me have to work harder and longer. Anyway, so I pre-pin and my projects, whatever I'm working with. It makes it easier when I get to the sewing machine. Here I'm clipping the shoulder, or excuse me, the sleeve markings, just about 1/8 inch, no more than 1/4. Now I'm going to tell you that on this pattern, it does not suggest that you interface the facing for this particular garment. I usually always interface my facings, because if you're putting buttons in, you want some form of stability, and it's a lot less hassle than putting small pieces over the buttonhole area, and it doesn't take really much work to do it. So I usually always interface my facings for all my shirts, no matter what, unless the style makes it a little bit more difficult, which at some point you will see me work on one of those. And those are called self plackets, just so you know. So just going ahead and interfacing. It is a Pellon light featherweight interfacing. I'm not for sure what number that is, but that's what I am using. Now you do see excess on it. I'm not concerned about it because it'll either be serged off or I'll cut it off. One of the two. And this is just a piece of fabric that I'm using because the interfacing is the glue side is up, and I don't want to damage my iron by doing ironing straight on there. This is the back side. Okay, you know, at the very beginning I talked about I did a modification, slight modification on my husband's shirt. And you probably can't tell, but because the pattern pieces, the center back is closer to me, but I actually shifted the bottom of the hem a little bit so that it wouldn't gape out. I don't know if you've ever noticed on some patterns or some things you've made for men that maybe it tints out towards the back side. Excuse me. It tints out at the back side of the shirt, and to kind of avoid that, I usually tilt it in about a half an inch at the hemline, and then it gradiates to the normal back width at the top. So that's the only thing that I did do different. You may see it, I may notice it if I remember to take a picture of my husband wearing it, and you will see what I'm talking about and how that modification makes a big difference on how the back of the shirt hangs on him. It doesn't work for everybody, but it definitely works for my husband. Also, too, I know it looks like I am very organized and neat, but I have to try to do stuff like this, or at least put my pattern pieces back together and inside the envelope, because usually if I don't do it while I'm prepping a pattern, that pattern ends up, let's just say, yeah, lost pretty much all the time. I don't know what part this is. Alright, I decided to, of course, add a pocket in to make sure it was not wrinkled. I, of course, ironed it first. I'm using a rotary cutter to cut this out because the rayon challis has a tendency to shift a lot, and I wanted to make sure the pocket was straight. Now, because of the weight of the material is very light and flimsy, you will see when I show you the very top of the pattern, it is about 1.5 inch portion that will be turned down. And to give some stability, I am going to add some interfacing across the top of the pattern. So I will cut 2 pieces to make sure it matches or is the width I need it to be, to give a little bit additional support to my pocket top, especially if you plan to put a buttonhole at the very top. That will be a smart move as well, just stability wise. I am pointing out on the pattern that you need to make markings for the placement of the pocket as well as the placement for your buttonholes. Those are very important because you don't want to put your pocket in a location that is in your way. Period. Next, I have my basket of buttons, and I'm going to select those next. That was just me clipping the very edge. I'm making the markings on each one of the pockets, each one of the buttonholes, all the way down, both front and back. I am doing the outside of the pattern because you're not going to see that on this particular pattern. You won't see the markings if you put them on the inside. Normally I would do all my markings on the inside, but because these are placement things, I need to make sure I do them on the outside, which is the right side of your fabric. Make sure you use a contrasting marking tool. Like I said before, I use chalk mostly. I hardly ever use any other type of marking tools because sometimes the markings come back and I don't want them to be seen. Excuse me, I am yawning. For me, this is kind of the fun part, trying to find the best button to work with the garment. Yes, I do consider the recommendations of the pattern, but not always. I usually just kind of go through all my buttons, placing them next to the fabric. Right now, all you see me doing is I'm pulling out all the ones I know won't work and then pulling aside the ones that could possibly work for the garment, and they'll be set aside. I will narrow my decision after I've picked out through all the buttons, which can take me a good 30 minutes. As you can tell, I have a whole bunch of buttons, and so that's why it takes so long. I'm going to bring you in close so you can see the buttons that I finally selected for this shirt, or at least to narrow them down. The first one was a plastic button, probably a half an inch maybe. Then there was one that was a wood button, which is probably the first one, excuse me. And then I picked this other multi-pattern one, and probably didn't pick the one that had the white because of the white that's in the actual, or the cream color that's in the item. I didn't like it, and I decided to go with the plastic one in the middle. I think it was a great selection.